The Seattle Seahawks have shuffled their roster around before their Week 18 game against the Rams. All right, everybody. Good morning. It is game day. We're about 4.5 hours away from kickoff, the final kickoff of the Seattle Seahawks season. And we've got a little bit of news. We've got a little bit of roster shuffling. I understand that this stuff doesn't feel like it matters as much as it usually does. And in fairness, it doesn't. But the show goes on. So let's take a look at what these Seahawks have done to their roster. They've done some typical shuffling around. I think we all know that they've had some injuries crop up this week that were new, and they've had to make moves accordingly. So we got this John Boyle article on Seahawks.com. Let's take a look. So a few different things. They signed a couple players. They put a couple players on IR, and they elevated a couple players from the practice squad. And all these moves mean different things. So let's start with the signings. First guy they signed was Artie Burns off the practice squad. So that's obviously your veteran that is replacing the injured Josh Joby. So Josh Joby is out. Artie Burns is likely going to play a decent amount this weekend. And I know some people would say I'd prefer to see some Nehemiah Pritchett out there or even a Trey Brown because those guys are younger. But the Seahawks are trying to win this game. And you might see some Pritchett, you might see some Trey Brown, but if you're trying to win the game, you want to get your best players on the field at least a good chunk of the time, and Artie Burns, I believe, is looked at as a better player than Brown or Pritchett right now, and I agree with that sentiment. So we'll see how much Artie Burns plays. I would expect him to play a pretty good amount. And the other guy we signed off the practice squad, again, this is signed, not elevated, Brandon Pilley, a nose tackle. And what that means is probably that Byron Murphy is not going to play. That would be my best guess, especially because there's another move. We'll talk about that in a second here. But very good chance that we don't get Byron Murphy this week. Why would you risk it? You know, the game already is devalued in terms of impact. So Brandon Pilley has been elevated, and he will probably get to play a little bit. Probably not a lot, but this team is very thin on the defensive line, so you're very quickly going to be the next man up on this team right now. It's just the way that it is. So those are the two guys who were signed. So they get a slightly bigger paycheck this week, and the Seahawks get a look at them. And I don't know how excited we are to look at those two guys, but that's what we got for this week. Now, Josh Joby and Abe Lucas were put on IR to make room for those two. Obviously, that doesn't really matter. We knew both those guys were out for this game. They can't play. They both have injuries that prevent them from being able to play football right now. So there's not really any reason not to put them on IR. You need the two roster spots, so that's what happens. So hopefully we see them both next year, especially Lucas. Hopefully this is just a minor setback, and it's not an indicator that things are going to get a lot worse next year. So that's really about all that's going on that front. And we also have our typical 2-a-week practice squad elevations. Quinton Bohanna is one. So that's another nose tackle. That's another defensive tackle who is likely being elevated because we will not have Murphy. That would be my best guess. So one way or the other, we're trying to cover ourselves. Maybe Murphy plays a little bit, but we want to give ourselves another option in case he can't go more than a handful of snaps. So Quinton Bohanna played a little bit earlier this year, might get a chance to play some this week. And we also elevated Tyler Mabry, which makes some sense because Brady Russell's been put on injured reserve. Now, Brady Russell's been injured for a while. He just hasn't been on injured reserve until now. But regardless, probably signing Mabry for that purpose. I would personally hope that Mabry doesn't get to play at all on offense. Between Fant, Brown, and Barner, you definitely have enough tight ends to play the snaps you're going to need them on. So you don't need to put Tyler Mabry into the mix there. Not necessary. But that's all the roster news. That's all the updates that we have concerning the roster. So there's nothing left except to play this game out, talk about what needs to be talked about, and then move into the off season. And don't forget, I know that today is not the game that we want to be playing. We don't want to be playing a game where we're already eliminated from the playoffs and the team we're playing is already clinched. We didn't want that. Nobody wanted that for the 2024 season. But at the same time, let's remember that even in a game like this, like, there are going to be some guys on this team that are playing their final game as a Seahawk. And a lot of them, people will probably be of the mindset of good riddance to bad rubbish, because they're not players that they like. They're not players that added a lot of value. But in some cases, the players were very much appreciated when they were here. And the fact that they're playing what could be their final Seahawk game is something that we as fans should acknowledge. Obviously, the big one is Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is probably playing his final Seahawk game today. Final game as a Seattle Seahawk. 10-year career, very prolific, put up Ring of Honor borderline worthy numbers to me. Put up borderline retiring his number type numbers when he was here. Consummate professional. Really, really great teammate. Really, really good player to have around here. And that's going to be one that hurts, that we were never able to win a Super Bowl with Tyler Lockett on the team, that we were never able to put together a deep playoff run with Tyler Lockett on the team. If this is the end for him, then, I mean, it was a great decade, and he will probably go down as probably the second greatest receiver in franchise history. And it was great to watch him these last 10 years. So keep in mind that there's a very good chance you're watching Lockett play his last Seahawks game. There's Jaron Reed. He might be playing his final game as a Seahawk. He's getting older. His contract expires in this offseason. And if we don't bring him back, it's very unlikely we see him back. And he's not a guy who's appreciated on the level of a Tyler Lockett, but he had really productive years here. He's been very good. He was much better than I thought he would be over the last couple years. I was really happy with him these last 2 years. And he's a guy who will probably not make the Ring of Honor, but he's not that far away from Ring of Honor consideration when you take a look at his numbers and take a look at how much he produced when he was here. So I'll be keeping that in mind as we go to this game. And there are other players as well, and some people won't feel very sentimental about them maybe, but it could be Geno Smith's last game as a Seahawk. It's possible. I don't think it will be, but who knows what's going to happen this offseason. It could be DK Metcalf's last game as a Seahawk. I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. I don't think it is. I think both those guys get extended as of right now, but it could be their last game. And look, in my book, Geno Smith gave us 3 quality years as a franchise quarterback, so that's something that I appreciate. And if this was the end of the road, then I got nothing but positive things to say about what that guy tried to do when he was here. And DK Metcalf, he is very close, if not at the top 5 in terms of receivers in this franchise's history. And if this is his last game as a Seahawk, it won't have been a perfect run for him. He will have put himself on people's radar in negative ways at times, but I will remember a very productive receiver who did a lot of good things here and was the closest thing that we had to a superstar for a little stretch there. So no hard feelings. And then you've got maybe a guy like Uchenna Nwosu. This might be his last game, depending on what we decide to do with his contract in the offseason. Are we maybe thinking about moving off of that because we can't afford him? Are we going to try to make it roll for one more year? I don't know. It's possible. As of right now, I think he's going to stick around, but this could be his last game as a Seahawk. He had I understand that he missed a lot of time with injuries while he was here, but when he played, he was pretty on point. This could be the last game for a player like, you can't well, I guess you can't say Abe Lucas because he's not going to play in this game. Maybe somebody like a Reek Woolen. This might be the end of the line for Reek Woolen. And as much as he turned me against him this year with the way he played and with some of the way that he's acted, the ways in which he's acted, That rookie year was special, and that was something that was really exciting for a lot of people, including me, because we thought we had something beyond lightning in a bottle. And right now, admittedly, when I think of Woolen, I mostly think about how he blew that opportunity. But at the same time, you live in the moment as a sports fan, right? You don't think about how, well, I'm happy right now, but I could be sad later, so therefore I can't be happy right now. No. In the moment when you're supposed to be happy, you're happy. And then sometimes you get sad later and sometimes you don't. And obviously, Noah Fant, this is probably the end of the line for him in Seattle. I don't think anybody's going to get too emotional about that, but he was a professional. He did his job over the last 3 years overall. He wasn't a great player for us, wasn't everything we wanted him to be, but he was a starting caliber tight end in this league. And again, I don't think it was lack of effort or anything like that with him. I think he just it never really fit the way it should. Could this be the final game as a Seahawk for somebody like I don't know how if anybody's really emotional about George Fant, but hey, George Fant grew up here, right? George Fant made his initial NFL bones in Seattle. And obviously him coming here to Seattle has been a bit of a disaster. His second tenure has been an unmitigated mess, but he did do some good things for this team on his first stint. So if this is the end, then that would be something that I look at too. And there are probably a few other players as well. Maybe guys we're not even thinking of right now. This is the second off season with a new head coach. He might want to rip out some stuff that we weren't even thinking about ripping out. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. We got a game in less than 4.5 hours. And be prepared, guys. Be prepared for just about anything this offseason. So remember to appreciate the players that are out there for this game because they may never be out there for you again.